Why would we make pasta from scratch? Because it's easy and it's fun and it's civilized. We don't need a pasta machine. We don't need a pasta extruder. We've got the tools we need right here, baby. We're gonna be making a thin, straight noodle called tagliarini. Couldn't be easier. It's in the style of tagliatelle or pappardelle if you've heard about that. It's just thinner, closer to spaghetti. It's probably my favorite fresh pasta noodle. For the sauce, I think we're gonna do spicy tomato. It's gonna be an Arrabiata smashed up with a Amitriciana. So just like a smoky, spicy tomato sauce. I think that goes really well with a simple noodle. So that's the setup. Time for the play. For this dough, we're gonna need 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1 cup of semolina flour, 5 egg yolks, 2 whole eggs with their whites, 2 tablespoons of extra virgin olive oil, and 1 tablespoon of salt. To get started, we're gonna combine our 2 flours and our salt. Once that's stirred together, we're gonna make a well in the middle to add our eggs and olive oil into. With a fork, you're gonna gently whisk the oil and the eggs together. This will slowly start combining the flour from the outside in. If we were to mix everything together right off the bat, we could get some clumpy stuff that's going to be hard to work out later on. This is a tried and true method. This is what you call Italian granny style. It's been working for years. To make this dough a little bit easier for us to roll out by hand, I've added some extra egg yolks and some extra olive oil. If we were to just go straight semolina and whole eggs, like a lot of fresh pasta doughs call for, it might be a little bit hard for beginners to roll out properly. Once our eggs and flour in the bowl are starting to become well combined, we're gonna flip this out onto a cutting board and start working it by hand. This is where we actually start kneading the dough. The dry crumbly stuff will eventually get worked in. Just use the weight of your palms and switch left to right. It takes about 5 to 6 minutes of working like this for the dough to start to become shiny and well developed. As you can see here, there's definitely a nice sheen and tackiness to the dough. That lets us know that it's just about ready. Once we've worked the dough fully and it feels strong, we're gonna roll it into a slight tube and then we're gonna wrap it with plastic wrap. We're gonna let this rest for about an hour to 2 hours, preferably 2. Since we're not using mechanical pressure from a machine to roll this pasta out, we're gonna be using elbow grease instead. This extra rest time is gonna give us a little bit of an edge when it comes to rolling out our sheets of pasta. Okay, so I wanna talk to the spectrum of pasta widths and traditionally what sauces are used with what shape. On the far end of the wide spectrum, we've got pappardelle, which is about 1.5 inches to 2 inches thick sometimes. Usually these types of pastas are used for braised meats, sugo, stuff that's really rustic and hearty. The wider pasta shape just tends to hold these types of sauces well. If you were to put it with something thin like a spaghetti, an angel hair, or a tagliarini, it just really isn't gonna do the sauce justice. When you move into the more medium-sized pastas like tagliatelle, having medium cut vegetables or mushrooms makes a lot more sense as well. That way you're kind of getting a good match between the size of the pasta and the actual chunk of the food in it. So look for stuff like braised porcini mushrooms or roasted butternut squash with tagliatelle. On the thin end of the spectrum, we've got your fettuccine, your cotara, your tagliarini. These thinner noodles just kind of hold the loosey-goosey, saucy stuff a little bit better, and it's really more about the pasta itself than the sauce. And those are just examples, not rules. People are doing all kinds of crazy stuff out there. Are you talking about wild boar sugo with angel hair? Oh my God, that's so crazy. I wouldn't do it, but you can. She's bored. To get started on our tomato sauce, we're gonna need 28 ounces of crushed tomatoes, 8 ounces of smoky bacon, 4 garlic cloves, 1 small red onion, 2 tablespoons of tomato paste, 2 tablespoons of Calabrian chilies, a half cup of water, and a 1/4 cup of dry red wine. First step here is to just throw a quick small dice on some onions and then just sliver 4 cloves of garlic. To get started on this sauce, we're going to heat our Dutch oven over medium heat and throw in our bacon to start rendering. It'll take about 3 to 4 minutes for it to start giving off some of its fat before you hear a sizzle. We're going to cook that down for about 3 to 4 minutes before we add in our onions and then garlic to cook down. We want to get a hot saute, not a sweat on these. We do want to maybe start getting a little bit of color. After about 10 minutes and the onions and garlic have released their water and are starting to take on a little bit of color, we're going to come back with our Calabrian chilies and tomato paste and cook that down for about 1 to 2 minutes until the tomato paste starts to take on a little bit of color as well. At this point, everything should be very fragrant, frying in bacon fat, and just starting to get caramelized. We're gonna deglaze with the red wine and cook until that's evaporated. Finally, we're gonna add in our 28-ounce can of crushed tomatoes, stir to combine, bring to a simmer, and then turn down the heat and cook for about 30 minutes. This sauce is gonna cook for just about the amount of time it's gonna take us to roll out our pasta. The recipe for this pasta dough creates 4 portions, as does this sauce. We do wanna check back on this sauce in about 10 minutes and stir, just to make sure that the bottom isn't scorching. While the sauce continues cooking, we're gonna return to our rested pasta dough. We're gonna cut off 1/4 from the end and then lightly flour it and grab our rolling pin. We wanna make sure our rolling pin is well floured, and we're just gonna gently press down, roll it out to about 6 inches, flip it over, turn it 90 degrees, and then do the same. And this is really the theme for this whole rollout process, is that we're gonna gently apply pressure, try and expand the sheet by a few inches, flour it, flip it, turn it 90 degrees, and then roll it again. But as you can see here, very gentle pressure, rolling all the way across the entire piece of dough and hitting the corners where needed. That's where it tends to get uneven, is on the outside of the sheet. So make sure you're doing a complete roll front to back, and it's better to hit it with more passes with less pressure than to be pressing really hard in one spot and rolling it only once. So while rolling out this pasta, I just want to backtrack a little bit, talk about my experience with pasta. When I was a young line cook at a fine dining restaurant in Chicago, the restaurant made all of its pasta from scratch, and sometimes 4 or 5 different types. So I would clean up my station, run downstairs, and from about 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock every day, I'd be rolling out pasta. Anything from tagliatelle, agnolotte, pasta alla carbonara, ravioli. And through that process, I got a lot of experience and a lot of reps making pasta, and really developed my passion for it. Basically, what it comes down to is that you don't need fancy tools. You just need a little bit of time and a little bit of technique. And in the end, the more reps you get, the more experience you get, the more you'll enjoy making the pasta. And the more you enjoy making the pasta, the more you'll appreciate eating the pasta. Make sense? Okay, let's get back to the part where we're gonna cut this. You can see here, I've got the sheet laid out. It's looking nice and thin. It's probably about 3 printer pages thick. And not presenting any strong tears or thin spots, I'm gonna dust strongly with semolina flour and then fold it back on itself 2 or 3 times, leaving about 2 to 3 inch spacing. And then I'm gonna cut this crosswise. This is where you get to decide what type of noodle you're gonna have. You can go very thin or very thick. Once we've got our pasta sheets cut to the size we desire, we're gonna dust strongly with semolina. We're gonna fluff these noodles out so they don't stick together. I like to throw them right in the freezer in these pint containers so that way I can cook them whenever. Nearly 100% of good restaurants cook their fresh pasta from the freezer, so don't be afraid. The longer it stays out at room temp in the refrigerator, the longer it's gonna probably absorb whatever flour is on the outside of it, and then you're gonna get stuck with a gummy mess, and then you're gonna be bummed out. So while I was rolling out my pasta, I got a big pot of water to the boil, 4 quarts probably, seasoned it generously with salt. This pasta is gonna cook really fast. Fresh pasta usually cooks in about 2 to 3 minutes, very different from dried. So while the pasta is down in the water, I'm gonna take 4 ounces of my Arrabiata Amitriciana sauce, and I'm gonna heat it up over medium heat. Once my noodles are al dente, I'm gonna scoop them out of the water, making sure that I get a good amount of that pasta water brought over to my pasta sauce. That added starch really helps bring some luxurious mouthfeel to the sauce. We're also gonna add a little 1/2 ounce of butter to toss in, kind of emulsify in with that pasta water to kind of bring that extra layer of luxury, and also to kind of balance out a little bit of that acid from so much tomato product in this sauce. Okay, so we're gonna taste the noodle. We're getting really close. I think it tastes good, and now it's gonna be time to plate this thing up. tastes like pepperoni pizza. It's like bacon spaghetti. Here, yours is ready.
It's really good.
Now you see it. Making pasta from scratch isn't that hard, and it looks pretty fun. I hope I inspired you guys to give this recipe a try. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. And if you got any value out of this content, please hit subscribe, tell a friend. See you next time. See you next time.